Ai, tem o livro aí, muito bem. Pronto. Acho que o Sr. Reitor também possa ter tempo para o ler eventualmente.
Já estive a olhar.
Já? Ai, que bem, ótimo.
I'm looking at it before.
Ok. Great. Portanto, está ali o púlpito e o microfone, não é? Pronto.
Está aqui.
És para...
I'm very happy to meet you.
É um amigo, just a friend, a saint.
I have it with me.
O padre, o professor Dubois trouxe-o. Ele gostou muito do padre, da obra que o mestre lhe ofereceu. A obra. Gostou muito da obra. Não sei, depois, Sr. Reitor, tenho que lhe apresentar o mestre António Bessa. Conhece-o? Mestre António Bessa, o retratista oficial do Sr. Presidente da República e de muitos reitores de Portugal. Talvez o Sr. Reitor também tenha gosto em conhecer. Que veio especialmente e ofereceu este pequeno quadro ontem ao professor Dubois. Que eu encomendei uma obra ao mestre, ele veio para Paris para o nosso Instituto. Trata do Sr. Professor Dubois.
I'm a happy man.
Sr. Reitor, o João Fernando Reis da TV disse que me telefona daqui a 10 minutos, mas realmente já é tarde, portanto acho que ou estão atrasados ou não sei. Il y a un journaliste qui vient de m'appeler à une télévision qui devrait nous appeler dans 10 minutes, mais je lui dis qu'on commence là. C'est pas possible.
Well, welcome to this event for the presentation of the book Alzheimer, verdade, sobre, doenças, século. The session it will be speaking in Portuguese and in English. So, and we will start immediately by the welcome by the director of our university, Professor.
Well, good afternoon. Special greetings to Bruno Dubois and Katia, author and translator of the book that I'm holding in my hand now. And it's sort of interesting because it's a book written in French by a world-class specialist who is sitting here with us, translated to Portuguese by Katia, and I'm talking about it in English to you, who are mostly Portuguese. This tells something about our society and the degree of internationalization in which we live. This is a very interesting book that addresses a topic that is very timely, and it is also a worry across many countries due mainly to factors such as we live more and more, longer and longer, and the number of people affected by these diseases is increasing. Furthermore, it is of interest in the University of Aveiro for other reasons as well. Aging processes have been studied locally by an expert team, and so this topic is of great concern for all of them. So I'm very happy to have this event organized and held here in Aveiro. For that, I also thank Artur for all the work that as Vice Rector he has done to make this happen. And last but not least, I wish to point out that the problem, if I understand the problem correctly, is interdisciplinary. You cannot understand all the phenomena that are in this book unless we combine a huge set of disciplines. And that is also very adequate for the University of Aveiro, because we really cherish interdisciplinarity. It's a tough word to say, but very needed in practice, because most of the challenges of the real world are, of course, interdisciplinary. So for all these reasons, I'm anxious to learn more about the book, and I would give the floor to the next speaker. Thank you to all of you for your presence. Thank you.
This next speaker will be Katia Andrade. He's a neurologist, researcher in neurosciences, and collaborator of Professor Dubois in Paris, who translated the book to Portuguese. I would like to thank Katia for her kindness and all the efforts that she did to organize this event with us at the University of Aveiro. The subject, Alzheimer's disease, as Paulo said, it's a team of research of several of our researchers in different centers. Within the creation of the Clinical Academic Center and our interest in this scientific area, let me to combine the pleasure to have this event resulting from a suggestion of our colleague Manuel Santos, the director of our research center, Biomedicina, with the possibility to hear Professor Dubois, a renowned specialist in the field of Alzheimer and related disease. This event is occurring under the auspices of the Centro Académico Clínico. Please, Katia, the floor is yours.
Boa tarde. Se me permitem, vou falar em português. Cher Professor Dubois, se vous me permettez, je parlerai en portugais. Excelentíssimo Sr. Reitor da Universidade de Aveiro, Professor Paulo Jorge Ferreira, Excelentíssimo Sr. Vice-Reitor, Professor Artur Silva, Diretor também do Centro de Medicina Egas Muniz, cher Professeur Dubois, chère Madame Corinne Dubois, Excelências, colegas, minhas senhoras e meus senhores. Portugal enfrenta hoje um dos maiores desafios do século XXI. O desafio da longevidade. O envelhecimento populacional, com um número crescente de pessoas com idade superior ou igual a 65 anos, associado a uma taxa de natalidade relativamente baixa, está na origem de uma importante transição demográfica que, a meu ver, deve merecer a maior atenção por parte da sociedade civil, ou seja, todos nós, por parte da comunidade médica, onde eu própria me incluo, por parte da comunidade científica, onde tantos de nós nos incluímos, por parte do poder político. Esta transição demográfica não se observa apenas em Portugal. Enfim, ela verifica-se em toda a Europa e um pouco por todo o mundo, mas é particularmente acentuada no nosso país. Ora, o aumento progressivo da longevidade e, em particular, o aumento da esperança média de vida, que é atualmente de cerca de 82 anos para a população portuguesa, deve-se essencialmente aos prodigiosos progressos da medicina ocorridos no século XX, seja na área do medicamento e da farmacologia, com a introdução dos tuberculostáticos, dos antibióticos, das vacinas, seja na área da saúde pública, com a introdução de medidas sanitárias e de higiene, seja na área, agora mais nas últimas décadas, na área da biotecnologia e da inteligência artificial. Vivemos, pois, cada vez mais o que é, à partida, muito agradável. Porém, viver mais nem sempre significa viver com qualidade de vida. O envelhecimento, sabemos bem, é um processo biológico normal que se acompanha de alguma vulnerabilidade funcional. Acontece também que o envelhecimento pode estar associado, e não raras vezes, a situações de incapacidade e dependência de terceiros. Pois bem, é isto que se verifica em doentes que sofrem da doença de Alzheimer. Porque esta é, de facto, uma doença associada à idade, ou seja, uma doença cuja frequência aumenta a partir dos 65 anos de idade, embora também possa ocorrer em idades mais jovens. Uma doença de instalação insidiosa que se caracteriza por um declínio cognitivo progressivo até à chamada fase de demência, que se caracteriza, esta sim, por uma perda de autonomia e dependência de terceira pessoa por parte do doente. Ora, a doença de Alzheimer é a causa mais frequente de demência em Portugal, na Europa e no mundo. Os números não enganam. Trata-se de um tsunami que aí vai. Um tsunami cujas consequências familiares, sociais, económicas devemos ser capazes de antecipar. Tudo isto e muito mais nos é dito por estas e outras palavras em Alzheimer, a verdade sobre a doença do século, da autoria do professor Bruno Dubois. Um livro cientificamente rigoroso, escrito numa linguagem acessível a todos, que não só explica o que de facto é a doença de Alzheimer, como também nos revela a nós próprios, dando-nos a conhecer o cérebro, sede do pensamento, sede das emoções, sede da nossa própria identidade. Um livro, como disse, da autoria do professor Bruno Dubois, que eu tenho o privilégio de conhecer e de com ele trabalhar há mais de 15 anos em Paris, um eminente neurologista francês, professor de neurologia na Universidade Sorbonne, fundador no Hospital Pitié-Salpêtrière, berço da neurologia, com o lendário Jean-Martin Charcot, fundador, dizia eu, do Instituto de la Mémoire et de la Maladie d'Alzheimer, centro de excelência dedicado à clínica e à investigação no domínio da doença de Alzheimer e das doenças aparentadas. De resto, o professor Bruno Dubois é também um renomado cientista, renomado mundialmente e um dos mais citados no que diz respeito a esta devastadora doença neurodegenerativa. É ao professor Bruno Dubois que devemos a definição moderna da doença de Alzheimer. traduzir esta sua importante obra, traduzi-la na minha língua materna e assim poder partilhá-la com todos vós, com todos os portugueses, com todos os falantes de língua portuguesa espalhados pelo mundo, foi um desafio que me propus e que cumpri com grande entusiasmo. Fiquei, de resto, muito feliz por saber que o livro, publicado em abril deste ano, foi logo selecionado para o Plano Nacional de Leitura. Porém, porque há quase sempre um porém, a sua publicação não teria sido possível sem o apoio financeiro da Universidade de Aveiro. E faço questão de agradecer aqui, publicamente, ao Sr. Professor Manuel Santos, diretor do Instituto de Biomedicina, a quem de início apresentei este projeto e que logo o abraçou com entusiasmo. E agradecer também ao Sr. Vice-Reitor, Professor Artur Silva, pelo seu manifesto interesse também por este projeto, a quem devemos também hoje esta sessão. A ambos, estimados amigos, muitíssimo obrigada por mais este contributo para o desenvolvimento da medicina e da ciência em Portugal. Por fim, uma palavra também de agradecimento ao editor Manuel Fonseca e à sua tão criativa Guerra e Paz Editoras, porque o livro não é apenas o conteúdo, é também a estética, e a Guerra e Paz Editores sabe fazer belos livros. E agora penso que é de facto chegada a hora de ouvir o excepcional Professor Bruno Dubois. Muito obrigada a todos.
Thank you very much for being there, and thank you for the welcome. Katia. First of all, I have to apologize because I don't speak Portuguese. Sorry. I speak well French. Not very good English, so we'll try. Okay. Thank you for your charming welcome. I would like to thank particularly the rector, George Fogarth, and also Arthur Sylvia, who very kindly received us yesterday. It's very nice for me to be here, to discover Porto, beautiful town, and Aveiro, charming city. So it's a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to thank Katia who organized this since the beginning. As she said, she's working with me, she's doing a very good job, and she was involved in the translation of the book. And also, thanks to you, you organized all this meeting with the help of Arthur Silva. So thank you very much, all of you. And I would like to give a special thanks to Mestres Bessa, who very kindly yesterday, he's a great painter in Porto. And we visited him yesterday, and he gave me this charming little piece of oil painting. And it's very, very, for me, it was a very good feeling, and I would like to thank you very much to be here and to give me that. Okay. After this charming introduction, we have to speak about the funny disease, which is Alzheimer's disease. I think that here everyone knows more or less what is Alzheimer's disease, and I think you said a few words about the disease. But I would like to define with you in reality what is this disease. And I have to press a button probably. This one.
Arthur, talvez não.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. So what is Alzheimer's disease? First of all, Alzheimer's disease is a disease. I just want to say that because some people are trying to establish that Alzheimer's disease does not exist. I don't know if it's the case in your country, but in France, there are a geriatrician who says that, unfortunately, that Alzheimer only represents an aging of the brain. It has nothing to do with the disease. But please believe me, believe the neurologist who saw patients, unfortunately, who are affected very young, around 55 or 60-year-old. There is no discussion. Their lives and their families are devastated by the consequence of the disease. So Alzheimer is really a true disease. A disease of the brain, the consequence of the death of cortical neurons. This disease was described in 1906 by Alzheimer in the proscenium, that is, in patients younger than 65-year-old, and later in 1976 it has been decided to mix the presenile form with the senile dementia, and by this way Alzheimer's disease became a very, very important disease, a tsunami, as you say. Alzheimer is a disease of the person, is a disease of the family, is a disease of the society. Whose frequency increases exponentially with age, and which will become a public health issue. It's already become a public health issue in the last 20 years due to the aging of the population in developed countries. And I would like to show it to you by this slide, where you see here the countries where the percentage of the population aged over 60-year-old is greater than 20%. So you can see here mostly America, Europe, Australia, and Japan. Okay. This was in 2012. Okay. Now I will show you the expectation in 2050. Okay. Almost all the countries in the world, at the notable exception of Africa, will have its population will have more than 30% of its population aged over 60-year-old. And because of that, these countries, all these countries, will have to be prepared to deal against the consequence of aging population, that is Alzheimer's disease. So this is the societal aspect, and I would like to give you an answer. The answer how to deal with this disease is definitely to work on the scientific and medical issues. And it's exactly what I would like to show you now. It's to present to you what are the challenges that we are facing if we want to overcome this problem. So, since the definition and the description by Alzheimer in November 1906, we described, as you know, the two main lesions in the brain of this woman, Auguste Day, that was amyloid plaques here and internal changes of tau protein. These are the two lesions that have been described by Alzheimer in 1906. Since this description, there is at least 5 important features that I would like to discuss and to present to you that we have learned during the last century. The first is that we know now, the biological cascade, that is the sequence of events that lead to the occurrence of cognitive symptoms. We know now that all start with Maybe I have a pointer.
I think you know.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. All start here by the presence of changes in tau proteins in the medial temporal lobe that we all have after 40-year-old. This is age-related tau changes in the medial temporal lobe. Unfortunately, when you have the presence of amyloid changes, amyloid lesion in the cortical areas, then there will be a spreading out of these normal age-related lesions that are in the hippocampus that will invade all the cortical areas and that will be responsible for synaptic dysfunction and the occurrence of cognitive decline. This is the first feature that I want you to know. The second feature is that we know now the natural history of the propagation of these brain lesions. They start here in the hippocampus. And you have to know that the hippocampus is in charge of transforming all that we see, all that we hear, all that we feel, all the events of our life in memory traces. And because of the disruption of the functioning, the dysfunction of the hippocampus, we are no more able to transform all the events that are present into memory trace. And because of that, just one thing, we have called this long period with this neuron involvement of the hippocampus, we have called this period of prodromal stage of the disease. That is a stage with a predominant and rather isolated memory changes. Memory amnestic syndrome, I would say, which is different from the memory complaint that we all have over, let's say, 55-year-old or 60-year-old. I'm speaking about a memory deficit in memory test. This is an amnestic syndrome due to the lesion of the hippocampus. Therefore, there are two different stages. You have the prodromal stage, and this stage is secondarily associated with other cognitive and behavioral changes in relation with the diffusion of lesion to neocortical areas. So based on that, we now divide Alzheimer's disease in two different stages. The dementia stage, which is the classical one, we heard about that, dementia of Alzheimer's disease. But we introduced recently a new stage of the disease, which is the prodromal stage, which is a stage of symptoms before the whole feature of dementia, which is just characterized by an amnestic disorder. I'm not speaking about memory complaint, I'm speaking about deficit, objective memory disorder. The third thing you have to know about Alzheimer's disease is the discovery of biomarkers. That's very, very important. Since 15 years, or let's say 20 years, there are some biomarkers which are considered as a surrogate of the brain lesions of our patients. And the second interest is that we can assess these biomarkers in vivo, either by CSF, it's a lumbar puncture. It's the reason why you heard about the possibility that we can do lumbar puncture in order to verify the presence, the positivity of biomarkers, and we can make a dosage of amyloid here or tau levels, or it can be assessed with another way. It's a neuroimaging PET, that's a new instrument that can reveal the presence of of Alzheimer lesions, amyloid or tau. So we can see them in vivo, or we can measure the level in the CSF today. And because of this discovery, we were able, several years ago, in 2007, to propose a new set of diagnostic criteria based on the co-occurrence of the association between a clinical phenotype plus a positivity of biomarker. We introduced the biomarker in the definition of the disease in 2007, and now the diagnosis is based on a clinical biological definition of the disease. The fourth feature is that these biomarkers are present several years before the occurrence of the symptoms. I want you to get this point, which is very important. It means that biomarkers are already present, already positive, before the occurrence of the first symptoms. Why? Because we know now that Alzheimer lesions can precede the onset of the disease for more than 15 years. Okay. This has been shown in this study, the Diane study, where they were following over years cognitively unimpaired, cognitively normal subjects who had a genetic mutation. They will develop the disease because they have a genetic mutation, and they are followed, and several years before the onset of the disease, there are already changes in the CSF tau, that is in the concentration of tau proteins in the CSF, okay, several years before, almost 20 years before, in here, for example, the CSF beta, which decreased very early, in the hippocampal volume measured by the MRI, magnetic resonance, or in the molecular neuroimaging, you have a decreased glucose metabolism PET. So, can you imagine 15 years before the onset of the first symptom, before the onset of the prodromal phase I was discussing just before, there are already changes in the brain of the patients. And now, because of that, Alzheimer's disease is placed on a continuum with 3 different stages. The dementia stages and the prodromal one we already discussed. But now we are including a new stage, which is the preclinical stage of Alzheimer's disease. And this stage, the 3 stage, have, as you can imagine, a different clinical presentation. Here it's dementia, here is amnestic syndrome, we discussed it before, and here there is no symptoms at all. But they all share in common the positivity of the biomarkers which link them to Alzheimer's disease. And the fifth feature I want you to understand is, and there is a liaison between all these features, you will understand why, is that the latest disease-modifying drugs, such as the monoclonal antibody directed against the amyloid lesion in the brain, the latest one, are all working on the lesions. They are inducing the diminution of the lesion in the brain. And there is one, I didn't show you, the last one, the donanemab, which is developed by Lilly, is incredible. It totally washes out the lesions. During the clinical trials, the lesions disappear from the brain of the patients. But unfortunately, they only act a little on the symptoms. There are dramatic changes in the level of lesion in the brain with no or only minor changes on the symptoms. So there is today a conceptual shift, and I want you to understand where we are now. That's today. That is to turn left
that is to treat as early as possible, to treat at a preclinical stage of the disease, to treat the cerebral lesion before the clinical symptoms. You get the point? Okay. The idea is, it is postulated that intervention prior the occurrence of symptoms may have better chance of changing clinical course of the disease. And it has been postulated that delaying dementia by 5 years would reduce projected healthcare costs related to AD by nearly 50%. So, you see, we are working on this conceptual advancement. You know, it's totally new. We are thinking about the possibility to treat normal people in order to delay the onset of the clinical disease. So the question now is very important. Are we sure that the presence of Alzheimer lesion, amyloid lesion for example, is sufficient to ascertain and to define the high risk of progression to a clinical disease? And this is a major problem that we have to face now. If the positive biomarker is equivalent in cognitively normal people, is equivalent to have Alzheimer's disease. Lesions appear not to be sufficient, and I would like to show you this by at least two examples. The first came from a study in which they followed, it's in Australia, they followed a large number of cognitively normal subjects during 6 years, and all the subjects have an amyloid PET scan. And I would like to show you two different cases. The first at the bottom here is the cases of a woman. She is 73 years old, and she had an amyloid PET. And you will see with the further cases that she had here she has no lesion. She has no amyloid lesion, and there is a way to know that. She is 1.3 as a mean level of lesions, and the threshold of positivity is 1.6. She is well below the threshold of positivity. She don't have any amyloid lesion, and with time, you know, during the 5 or 6 years, 6 years of follow-up, she did not develop lesion in the brain, as you can see here, no lesions. And interestingly, her cognitive level remains stable. She has 29 out of 30. She is normal. We all have around 28, 29, or 30. This is an MMS score. It's a little score that gives you an idea of the brain functioning. At 29, it's very good. She's very good. 29, 30, 29, 30, 29. So she maintained her cognitive functioning, and she has no brain lesion. So, okay, this is the first case. Let's see the second case. Now all of you are expert in looking at this PET scan, and you see now that there are a lot of lesions in this case. It's an older man. He has 78-year-old, and you see he has a lot of lesion in the brain, a lot of amyloid lesion in the brain. Yeah? His brain is devastated by amyloid lesion, and you see that the level is far above the threshold of 1.6, is 2.2, and you see that with time it's increased. You see that he has more lesions here than at the beginning. He's around 2.4, but interestingly, you see that during all the course of the follow-up, he maintained his cognitive level to 29, 30, 29, indicating that there is no clear relationship between the presence of amyloid lesion in the brain and a cognitive dysfunction. Okay, that's very important. And we have exactly the same impression based on a big study that we've done at the Salpêtrière Hospital. We have followed 320 cognitively normal subjects, 320. It's a large number in one center, monocenter study. All of these subjects with a mean age of 76 years old, all of these subjects has an amyloid PET scan at the entry of the study. And on this 320, only 28%, that is 88 subjects, were amyloid positive. So 88 subjects amyloid positive, and we follow them for 5 years. And what we see is that after 5 years, of the 88 that were amyloid positive, they are now age of 82-year-old, 81 or 82-year-old as a mean. Only 15 out of 88 progressed to Alzheimer's disease. That means that 73 did not progress to Alzheimer's disease. And interestingly, we showed that in those who remained stable over time, that were amyloid positive or stable, there are some changes in the EEG, that electroencephalographic recording, showing changes in the frontal areas, indicating that there are some subtle mechanism of compensation in the brain that may explain that we maintain the function even though there are some lesion in the brain. So this is a new concept that we have introduced based on that. The concept that the brain has a resilience, in French. The brain is able to compensate for the action of lesions by some compensatory mechanism that we are working on now. So that's very important to understand, that the presence of lesion doesn't mean that we already have Alzheimer's disease. It only means that we are at risk of developing the disease. And based on that, we have proposed to distinguish two different stages in the clinical course of the disease. There is Alzheimer's disease, okay, that's clear, when there is clinical symptoms plus biomarker positivity, that's Alzheimer's disease. And as we learn now, there are the prodromal stage and the dementia stage, okay. But there is another situation in cognitively normal subjects with a biomarker positivity. We should not speak about Alzheimer's disease because we don't know if they all will progress to Alzheimer's disease. And as I told you, in the future, in 5 years, 10 years, we will treat these patients in order to delay the onset of the disease because we have treatments that are acting on the lesions, okay? So we have to be sure 100% that these cognitively normal subjects, amyloid positive, will evolve to the disease. Because there is no possibility to treat someone that will not develop a disease with treatment that may be aggressive or so we have to be very careful. So we want to call them asymptomatic at risk. And this is interesting because in the future we have to define the risk of the people. So this conceptual approach is not purely theoretical. It allows us to propose a probabilistic model according to which the risk profile is personalized according to multiple factors. Some of these factors may increase the risk of progression to Alzheimer's disease, such increased age, frailty, maybe the sex, low education level, ApoE status, and so on. So there's several factors that may increase the risk and may favor the progression to Alzheimer's disease. Conversely, we have to learn about some of the factors that may reduce the risk, such as genetic risk factors, which may be protective or higher cognitive reserve. So, this approach, I think, opened the door for possible intervention against modifiable risk factors that have been shown to play a role in dementia or in Alzheimer's disease. such as, for example, low education, hypertension, obesity, hearing loss, smoking, depression, physical activity, social isolation, diabetes, in conjunction with the presence of biomarkers or some genetic factors. These are the main challenges that our modern societies will have to face. First, to define the risk in cognitively normal subjects, and second, to modulate this risk by appropriate and personalized intervention. So I think that it's opened the door for what we call clinical research. That is, some work that are done on patients, not on animal models or on the patients. We have to define the risk. We have to create what we call. I'm working in circuitry now today to do what I call a center for prevention of dementia. That is a center where we will define the risk of someone. For example, you came and say, okay, my father, my grandmother have a problem, I'm complaining and so on. But based on what I just presented, based on the list, we have to identify the risk of progression. And this risk will give us the possibility to propose some intervention that will be personalized. For example, if you have hypertension, we will treat the hypertension and so on. And if the risk is very high to develop Alzheimer's disease, in 5 years we will have treatments that are positive against the ability. So you have to prepare to do this. I just want to show you that it's an awful disease. It's very impressive. The risk is very high for all the countries in the world. But the solutions came not from musical therapy or things like that. It came from this approach, which is based on the calculation of the risk and to do some specific intervention adapted to this risk. I thank you for your attention.
Well, out of protocol, if someone wants to do 1 or 2 questions, because we have 5 minutes, and I know that Professor are available to answer. Yes, that?
Can I take my mask off?
Yes.
Just for a minute. Thank you very much for the presentation. That was wonderful. In terms of therapeutic strategies, what do you think in the next 5 years? What will be the best targets, or what will be the best approaches for novel therapeutics in Alzheimer's disease?
As you know, we already have some treatments. We have what we call the anticholinesterase inhibitors that may have a small effect, but positive effect. So there is probably a lot of chance not to use them if the people are not too old, because there might be some side effects, as you know. First. The second thing is that that's very important to take care of the patients and to propose some, we call orthophonic, let's say, cognitive stimulation. It's important because it maintains social interaction, and that's not bad, and it may have a positive effect, but marginal effect. I think that the future is definitely disease-modifier treatment, which are very impressive. I saw the results of donanemab and DAM developed by Israel. That's very impressive. Let me tell you that the drug trial is proposed on 1.5 years. Okay, 1.5 years. So you have the treated group, okay, and the placebo group will receive no treatment. And after 1 year, they showed that after 1 year, there is no more lesions in the brain for those who are treated. And the question is, should we maintain a treatment if there is no more lesions? So, can you imagine? There is no more amyloid lesion in the brain. It's below the threshold of positivity. So they have to stop the treatment because the clearance is total. So these drugs are very powerful, and for some reasons, when we give them, even at the early stage of the course of the disease, probably it's already too late. Probably it's already too late. So there is a shift to go to this, let's say, preclinical stage of the disease, because if we can leave out all the lesions, we will no more go in the disease. That's a question. But as I told you, we have now to prove that the fact to have a lesion equal the onset of the disease.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Very nice presentation. I read your book.
Okay.
It's very interesting. One of the things that I found curious is the fact that it was so difficult in France, in other countries, to set up reference centers for Alzheimer's disease. You mentioned that some people don't believe that it is a disease. And of course, with the data that you showed and these new concepts that come out of the data, it seems that the polygenic risk scores and the biomarkers are not good enough yet. And so but it is important to diagnose early and to treat early. So the question is, how do we approach this? Because, for example, in Portugal, and you mentioned that this is treating elderly people, so this is complicated.
Yeah.
So in Portugal, we spend 1% of our National Health Service budget in preventive medicine. 99% is curative medicine, and this is a mindset. So the Faculty of Medicine teach how to cure, not how to prevent. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. So now, because you played such an important role in setting up these reference centers in France for diagnosing and treating Alzheimer's disease, so how are you approaching this issue?
Thank you for this important question, which is really conceptual and fundamental. I would say that we have to move, and things are moving, and you get the point. I used to say that my center was, until now, a center for the diagnosis. And it's no more, it shouldn't be no more a center for diagnosis, but a center for prevention. Or at least, we should separate it in two different parts. We have to take care of patients, but we have to move to this preclinical stage and to work on prevention. The question is, when start prevention? And prevention should probably start at the
beginning.
The
At the beginning.
the beginning, because we know that the level of education has an impact, not on the lesions, but on the time where the lesion will be clinically relevant. It means that low education is very bad. So when do we start prevention? We start prevention at the 40s, for example. We need to walk, we need to make sport. It has been shown that it decreases the rate of progression of hippocampal atrophy. So even at the 40s, so it's prevention during all the life, and we have to teach them, we have to educate nos concitoyens. And this is a change in the brain of the doctors themselves. I was not the kind of doctors that was so much interested by prevention, but I am moving myself. you understand? I was a doctor. As you said, I belonged to the 99% that was treating patients. And now I understand that we have to move. You're right. Your point is very well taken. We have to move and to work on the risk and genetic. So there was two parts in the question. How we will define the risk. I think we have to learn about all these factors that influence the risk in a bad way or in a good way. And we have to have a large series to discuss this with we have to think about a large series of patients, okay, of cognitively normal, sorry, and to follow them and to take a lot of data about them. Large series, and at the end of the day, after 10 years or 15 years or even, I don't know, 20 years, we will have some answers and propose some algorithm. And we are all working on that. We are working on that in the United States, or working on that in Paris. There is other, for example, in Australia, in Amsterdam, that we are creating big cohorts with, it's not epidemiology, it's really to have data, specific data that may give the answer by providing good algorithm of prediction. That's the thing we should do now in the future, all of us.
So I would thank once again Professor Dubois for this interesting and amazing lecture with us. Thank you very much. Now we will offer you, if you want, a book, and Professor Dubois will sign the book. We will come from this door, we'll open, and then we get out from the other door. That's okay. We will do it due to the COVID, trying to avoid the confusion of people. That's okay. We'll start this. Thank you for coming, and we will start the
You go for today, it's University's